everyone, depending on where you are in the world. It is Tuesday today, and we are back for another Confidence Convo. This is season 2, episode 2, and this week we are diving into how to change when people around you won't. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce myself. I am Davina Maria, and I am a master coach and founder of the Restore Yourself Method and host of Worthy Woman Facebook group. And I help female go-getters in their 30s develop unshakable confidence so they can powerfully step into their limitless potential. Over to you, Joanna.
Hello, Davina. Hello, everybody. My name is Joanna Tonkin. I'm a registered psychotherapist, self-confidence coach. I'm the founder of the Confidence Formula. I help young adults improve their self-confidence so they can become successful. Davina and I got together to create this for you because we are obsessed with personal development and we strongly believe in the power of learning from one another.
And just to clarify, we are not perfect at being confident all of the time. Like you, we move through our struggles and overcome obstacles and mindsets to continuously improve. So just think of us as guides by your side.
Yeah. So while David and I were getting together to come up with a topic for today's podcast, an interesting thought came to mind. And I think that the hardest part about changing that most people don't talk about is the grief or the loss that we experience before we experience whatever it is that we're changing into. And so the formula that I like to think about when I think about change or life transitions is life transitions equals grief plus new beginning. And we're so often eager to experience that new beginning and that new change or transformation that we bypass over the grief or the loss of what we have to give up in order to enter that new chapter or phase. And so some of those things might be the life that you're familiar with, right? Doing things the way that you're comfortable and familiar and feel really safe to you. It might be letting go of people or many people in your life who maybe don't agree with this new path or don't share the same values or interests. It also might be letting go of expectations of yourself, of what you thought life would look like at this stage, maybe, or expectations of what you want your life to look like in the future, right? And so I think the hardest thing about moving on or changing in any way, shape, or form is actually the grief and the loss. And most people don't talk about this. So I wanted to bring it to our attention today and have a little conversation about that. How would you feel about that, Davina?
I love it. I absolutely love it. And I know last episode we spoke about change as well. And we kind of touched on this a little bit, and we spoke about how, there's two sides to how people feel about change. Some people will automatically resist it, and then there's always sort of like the positive side of change as well, which is what you gain. And I think, today we're kind of diving into that a bit deeper. And I love that because I know that I use the analogy of like getting a new mobile phone and how, it's so exciting to have a new camera and to have, new functions and new storage and, faster, newer device. But I think it is true that you can still miss your old phone, for example. You might think, oh, I love this new one. It does so many new things for me, but I miss the one that I had because maybe it had, I don't know, better music quality, or maybe it had functions on the camera that aren't available on this one. And I think it's really easy to sometimes get caught up in the kind of positive that maybe the grief gets forgotten about to a degree, but then everybody still feels it.
And like from the examples that I mentioned already, moving on from the life that you knew and the expectations that you have, those are the kind of things that are in your control. Like you can do your own work with a therapist or a coach or work through that emotional grief yourself. But what do you do when the people around you won't change? Or what do you do when you want to enter this new chapter and the people around you maybe don't support you, maybe aren't changing with you? And so let's dive into that a little bit. So that controlling the uncontrollables, or being okay with not being able to control the things that are out of their control.
And I know it's like a really well-known phrase that we use in coaching where, we always say you can only control yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
we always talk about, your field of vision and what you can control, and then the things that are outside of it are the things you cannot. And I love that we're talking about this today, because obviously other people are always outside of that circle. They're never within the circle of what you can control. And I think for a lot of clients that I would work with, a lot of clients that I work with have that fear that if they change, if they stop being a people pleaser, if they start to set boundaries, if they start to say no, if they become slightly different, that they will lose friends, they will lose family, or people will be upset at them. So I think that, this is probably a lot more common than people realize.
Mm-hmm.
There's always that sort of side of losing something. And I think sometimes people are aware of it and they're afraid of it, so they don't change. And then
Mm-hmm.
other times people are not aware of it, they change and it happens. And then they're a bit like, oh, I didn't realize that this was going to be, you know, an outcome when I started my journey.
Mm-hmm. And then what do you do with that, right? The grief, the loss is inevitable as we move through different
Mm,
chapters and different phases of our life. And so
yeah.
what do we do when we feel, guilty for not being the people pleaser anymore, or shame that, we're not friends with the same group of people that we were once friends with? Like what do you suggest?
I always think of everything as levels. And I know we've spoken about this in previous episodes, like, your levels of confidence and kind of going up a scale. Um, and I feel like this kind of made me think about levels again, because on every kind of level of your life, perhaps you have people that are attracted to you and people that you attract like a magnet. I don't want to go into like law of attraction too much, but if you are at a frequency that is attracting these people because of where you are in your life, you are then on the same level, which means you can resonate with each other, you relate to each other, everything is kind of harmonious. And I think the moment you grow, or they grow, because it can happen either both ways. The moment you grow or they grow, one of you kind of goes up, and then suddenly you're not necessarily in sync anymore. You're not necessarily at that same frequency. And I think the same as what I said last week. I think we've got to accept. Well, first of all, we've got to accept both sides, because what you resist persists, right? So we've got to
Mm-hmm.
accept that, yay, it's great that I've grown. It's great that I'm better at setting boundaries, and it's great that I'm feeling more comfortable, with the guilt that I might have felt last year when I would have set boundaries. And then on the other side, I also accept that this feels really, really hard. And I know we've spoken about feelings and emotions in the past. I think you've got to sit with it. You've got to feel the feeling and whatever is underneath the grief, because I feel like underneath grief, because it's quite a complex emotion, you've got all of the other undercurrents underneath it. You might feel really sad, you might feel angry, you might feel anxious, you might feel, there's so many like emotions that might come up for you. But I think for me, it's about accepting that there's a part of you that feels sad, for example, being with that part. And I know we've spoken about this in a previous episode, but like, I know we described it as a beach ball, almost like being with the beach ball, knowing that the beach ball is not you, and trying not to kind of push it away. Because I think a lot of people would naturally, again, suppress the feeling because it's uncomfortable.
Totally. Totally. I think, acknowledging acknowledging the emotions that you feel, processing through
Mm,
the difficult emotions, knowing that they're normal. Like you might
100%.
feel a little bit of grief or sadness or
Yeah.
guilt or shame when you're starting to, become the person that you want to be. That's for sure 100% true.
Yeah.
Um, I also think about like really knowing what's important to you. And so I
Yeah.
had a client a couple days ago, and she was talking about she wanted to move out from a living situation with two of her good friends who are also her roommates. And she didn't know the timeline, but she really wanted to move out.
Mm,
And she said something to the effect of, she said something, and then it made me think like, so what your roommates and friends want is actually more important to you than what you want for yourself. right? She's willing to like sacrifice what she needed
Wow.
in order to maintain these relationships. And it made me really think of like, so who's important to people? Is it yourself?
Mm,
Are you the most important person in your life? Or are there people the most important person in your life? And so really knowing what's important to you
yeah.
and really making those things a reality is really important. And also, I think focusing on the opportunity, right? If there's a
Yeah.
grief and a loss, there's also a new beginning. So if these people don't fit that level that you spoke about or don't fit this next chapter or phase of your life, yes, it's hard to let people
Mm,
go and maybe they'll come back at a later chapter and a later stage and who knows what will be. But making some room in your life to allow people of a similar frequency or similar energy to then become part of your life, you're now making space for that by letting go. I think we forget that sometimes.
yeah.
So I know a couple years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I went through big like friendship grief with a whole group of people. And it was really hard at the time. But then I realized after that I was actually reaching out to more new friends and making more meaningful connections that really resonated with me. And I was kind of holding on to this old group because it was sentimental, but it really wasn't serving me the same way anymore, right? So I think we have to also
Yeah.
remember that letting go has a beautiful aftermath of opening us up to new opportunities and more space, right?
Yeah, definitely. I love two things that you've said there. The letting go is probably one of the biggest. Also love that you said that it's normal, because I think feeling these feelings, you're alive, you're human, you are experiencing
Mm-hmm.
something. And I think sometimes we feel uncomfortable emotions and our kind of instinct is to push them away. But I think trying to tell us something, which we need to pay attention to. And B, it's just proof that you are human and you feel things. Sometimes I'm feeling what I'm feeling because I'm human, I feel things and I have emotions, and that is it. That is okay. If I sit with this for, the chances are that that uncomfortable feeling will pass through. And I think go is such a, and you in what you do is let go. I don't feel like all about learning new things or trying new, becoming a different person, or I know we use the word growth, but I think sometimes the growth happens in the letting go and the
Mm-hmm.
releasing of things that maybe are potentially holding you back, in order for
Yeah.
you to, like you said, form connections with people that are aligned to maybe this level to this level. Because sometimes you are the fifth person in a group of people, and the people that you hang around with, you're most alike. So if you're sort of at this level and you're holding people that are also at this level, you're then not allowing yourself to kind of grow into being someone in this level, or someone in, and if you want more for yourself, and like you said, if you might want to strive to be with a different group of people and have a different experience as well.
Mm-hmm. I always say, transformation, at least at first, has to do with an unlearning and then a new learning.
Yeah.
And so we're unlearning the patterns and the behaviors and the,
Mm-hmm.
belief systems that we were programmed into. And so it starts with unlearning all of that before we can figure out what actually is
Yeah.
for us and move into the
Yeah.
growth part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I feel like, in some level, it is a hard thing. And I know you've already mentioned that it is a hard thing to feel like maybe you want to go somewhere else and you'd love the people that are around you to come with you, but they don't want to. really hard thing, particularly if you're close to them and you love them. I think sometimes your confidence is in those moments where you accept that you need to let go, and you trust that in time things are going to happen in the way that they are supposed to happen, meant to happen, whatever you want to call it. And in the kind of the growth and the letting go and the, feeling the difficult emotions, sitting with the difficult emotions, I think after a time, however long that period of time is for, because everyone's different, after the time of living and feeling all about it, I think, like you said, you'd get to a point on the other side of this, I am more confident. That will already be like a massive gain. I am more confident because I've been able to let go of certain things. I've been able to deal with uncomfortable emotions. I've been able to kind of increase my tolerance for those emotions and how I am with them. And I've also met new people, learned new things, learned more about myself. I think it's a massive confidence boost as well to feel okay about letting go.
And also, the confidence also comes back down to your trusting in yourself, right? Staying true to what's important to you, staying true to what you say that you're going to do. If this client that I spoke about, stays in that house with her friends and roommates, she's not really honoring herself. She's not doing what she wants. She's not learning that she can be trusted by herself. So she's not going to become confident in herself. So actually doing what you say you're going to do and actually following through with what you need become some of the foundational points of building self-confidence, I think.
Yeah, totally. And because I have been something very similar, and I feel like it's very important what you said about sort of staying true to yourself, how confidence is built in staying true to yourself. And I think if we flip it the other way, so let's imagine that you are someone who's to change, around you will not, and you decide not to change. I think that the kind of consequences of that are so much greater than letting go, because I feel like in that example, let's imagine you stay in the house even though you don't want to be in the house. Resentment will build, frustration will build, anger will build. Your whole kind of might change towards your friends, and the relationship might be damaged anyway. And then,
Exactly.
when the relationship is damaged, you're forced to let it go. And it's almost as if the changing an easier option, if that makes any
Yeah, when
sense.
you say it that way, for sure. Like if you're gonna get the same result, most likely either way, because either you're gonna get resentful and angry and then cause wedges in the relationship, maybe sabotage the relationship so you can finally get out, or just having those difficult conversations to maybe say, this isn't working for me, we might need to try something different and work towards a compromise and a solution. Like either way, you're gonna get what you want. It's just like, how do you want to go about doing it?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the key point. It's the path that you want to take towards changing. Feel like if you're in the situation, you know what you want and you don't do it, you kind of go, you get all the resentment and the frustration and the difficult feelings that come with that, a relationship that's potentially destroyed and irretrievable. Or you start from this point, you go forward, you have the tough deal with the difficult emotions, you grow. That relationship is still in your life in some capacity. So I think that, I think there's two ways of looking at it, and I love what you've just said there. It's about how you want to go about it.
Totally. Totally. Let's talk really quickly about changing and wanting other people to change, like because they're like your best friends or like they're your family or like the people that like you don't want to let go of. You want to bring them along with you on their journey. Um, have you ever experienced that? Like, have you ever helped coach someone
100%,
through
yes.
that,
100,
or
like the minute you
personally?
said that, yeah, I just thought of, in my own life, I've just thought of a few people as soon as you said it. And yeah, it is a really hard one. Like, I really difficult because I feel like we can see people sometimes very clearly, especially when it comes to potential. You know, especially if it's someone that you love, you think, oh my God, you'd be so good at this, you'd be so good at that. It'd be great if you could do this. And, you know, why don't you try this? And why don't you? Sometimes you can maybe get lost in the fantasy of who the, and maybe you're not grounded in the reality of who that person is. And I think for me, you know, the letting go, the acceptance, that is the biggest part of that kind of puzzle for me, because I think you've got, you know, and on my kind of coaching journey, one thing I've learned is that not everybody is into personal development. You know,
Mm-hmm.
some people are just like, I'm good as I am. I don't need to change. See you later.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes those people are our friends and family and the people that we love the most. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, for me, it's all about acceptance and just meeting them where they are rather
Totally.
than the,
Totally. I love that. I love meeting them where they're at, because not everybody wants to be on that growth journey, and that's okay. And you can still be in a relationship to people who aren't on that growth journey, and that's okay, as long as you manage your
yeah,
expectations of them in the relationship and say,
yeah,
things are probably not going to change, but can I be okay with how they are? And that's a big acceptance piece on our part that we can work through.
yeah,
I also think that one of
100%.
my secret weapons, if you will, on change is, I always think of it like, if I want someone to change and I'm like nudging them, or like I feel like I'm like almost like pulling them through like mud, like thick, heavy mud. It's like they're so
Mm-hmm.
resistant to that moving through
Yeah,
mud that it's not going to work. As much as I want that person to, come to me
yeah,
where I am, like it's not going to work. It's more like quicksand than it is like feasible,
yeah.
right? And so what I have
Mm,
tended to do in relationships is I plant a seed. I express,
yeah,
something, an area, mention something that might be nice if they could do, or an area of their life that I see, potential growth, because I'm a therapist. That's all I'm always thinking about, um, for
mm,
better or for worse. And then I let go. I let go of the expectation. I let go of the rope. I let go of trying to pull them and trudge them through the mud. And I'm just like,
mm,
they have the information. If they want to grow, they will grow. But because I want them
yeah,
to grow, they're going to rebel and push against it. So one of my secret weapons is just
yeah,
like name it and completely let go.
mm,
And it's just taken me like therapy sessions over after sessions to completely let go of any expectation and accept them exactly as they are. And interestingly enough, in
yeah,
my experience, a lot of the time the people change in the way that I've like sprinkled a little bit of fairy dust into, if you will. So that could be
mm,
something that you can try, but it really requires planting the seed and completely letting go
yeah,
of the expectation and expectation that they'll do
yeah,
the work or they'll change in any way. And you might be surprised. So that's just my little secret weapon.
yeah. That is such a helpful tip because I feel like our timing is not everyone else's timing, and planting the seed and letting go and not thinking about it anymore and just completely, you know, detaching from the
Exactly.
outcome. Um, you might then find in a year, sometimes it takes
Yeah.
longer than a year, but you might find in a year or so, they'll come to you and say, you know, you said this to me, this is what I did, this is how I felt, and then I did X, Y, Z. And it might not even be the way that you would have wanted things to go or whatever, but you can then sit and think, okay, my seed was planted, we got the growth. The growth doesn't look like what I wanted it to be, but they're
Yeah.
happy. And I think ultimately, you know, another important thing that you've just said is about um, them changing and fighting against it. I think it can go the other way, where maybe they don't fight against the change, but maybe they change for
Mm.
you and not for themselves. And that's another huge thing because ultimately you want the people that you love to change because they want to change.
Exactly. And that's the only way that it's going to be sustainable anyways, because they're just people pleasing you. Eventually they're going to figure out they don't actually want to do this, and then they resort back to what they actually want to do.
Exactly. It's not sustainable. Yeah, for sure. I absolutely love this topic, and I think we could actually go on about this one. I know I say it all the time, but I love this one, and I feel it's so interconnected with everything we spoke about last week. So it's been so great chatting with you, and we will be back again in 2 weeks' time for more information on who we are, what we do, and our love of all things confidence and self-development. You can find or follow us from our social media information, which will be posted below in the comments. And if you like what you've heard, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
Take care.